Welcome, everybody. Everybody have a good time at the AvPoint party last night? Who's on 4 hours of sleep? Anybody on 2? I think it was fun. So this session is going to be a little bit different, and obviously it's a pretty big room, and we'll see how many people show up. But if we want to scrunch together, or if you want to stay where you are comfortable, that's fine. It is intended to be a little bit more of a chalk talk, which just means we hope you have a lot of questions, and I'm not afraid to answer them. It might be the answer that you're looking for, but I will absolutely answer any question that you have. I have a lot of slides to go through, but we don't need to go through them all. I have a lot of demo to go through, but we don't need to go through it all. And if you have a lot of questions, we'll certainly try to get through as many as we can. So there are microphones, but if you don't want to go up to the microphone, I'll do my best to repeat the question. But I believe the sessions are being recorded, so if you can get to the microphone. But we'll get to a certain couple of parts where we'll just pause and hopefully have off-the-cuff discussion. But certainly we've got a lot of content to get through, depending on how much sleep everybody collectively got last night. So this is the overview of the new SharePoint Online. And just to be very factual, this is SharePoint Online as it is in the cloud based on SharePoint 2013 and running in our data centers. Currently we are in a preview where we're running in 3 major data centers, but when we go into GA in next year, it'll be effectively what everybody is going to move to if you're on Office 365 already, and we'll get you there. If you sign up once it's generally available next year, you'll just then be on 2013. And the experience, if you've ever provisioned Office 365, in about 15 to 20 minutes you have full SharePoint Online, full Exchange Online, full Link Online, and the Office client if you install it within a 15 to 20 minute window. Certainly that's the individual admin or the first person to set things up, and there's work to do depending on what you do with those different workloads. This talk is all about SharePoint Online, but just wanting to be clear that it's SharePoint Online inside of or as a part of Office 365. I'm on the SharePoint team. I can take questions about Office 365, about SharePoint Online. I know a little bit about Exchange and Link, obviously, to be effective, but some of the deeper questions, if you have them there, I'll probably point you to other resources, but I'll do my best. If you have any questions today, ask them. If you have any questions after the fact, on Twitter I'm just at mcashman, and email I'm just mcashman@microsoft.com. So I should be pretty easy to find. But the first thing is really just the statement that we've been making all along, that SharePoint in the cloud is really SharePoint as you know it if you've been using it on premises. It just happens to be hosted by Microsoft in our data centers. And we don't pitch it any differently. It is no different from the actual product that's in there. In the past we have had broader gaps, certain features, certain scenarios that you can't do in online. Some of that is scale-oriented, some of that is specific features. But as we move into 2013, this is really the first build or the first product that was more designed as a service than as a product. So its intent is to the cloud, and that's really our move going forward. So I'm not going to give you the whole sales pitch here. This is SharePoint as you know it, or SharePoint as you're going to know it by the end of the week. This is SharePoint where you go to share. This is where you go to discover. This is where, if you're an IT pro, you're going to go and get into the undercovers and manage. If you're a developer, you're going to go and build, and this is going to be a great platform, either building some code or configuring straight on SharePoint, or doing things in the cloud using the new cloud app model. But more so than ever, however we or anybody or you internalize what SharePoint is, that is also what SharePoint Online is. And that's really the whole part of this talk, is to showcase a lot of the things that are now a lot more mature if you were to compare on-prem to online. But we actually, and this is again maybe a moot sales point, but we don't actually create a separate SharePoint Online sales deck anymore. And I'm not going to linger on that too much, but really the pitch, or where we're talking about SharePoint, SharePoint is SharePoint, more so than it's ever been. But we do want to make sure that there's clarity on what that means in the cloud. So at a high level, at a glance, where we're going to go for the next 10 minutes or so is to walk through how we're closing the gap, the different improvements we've made for all plans. That's small business, a new plan that we have coming called the M SKU, or the mid-market SKU, and the enterprise. We also have another flavor for education and for government. And the way that I'll at least frame the conversation so that I'm not bouncing around too much licensing or skewing, because that's not as interesting. Anything when we say enterprise, it is really the same for SharePoint Online in terms of education and our government offering. It's really the same offering. It just happens to be a little bit less of a cost for education. And from a government perspective, they are in a bit of a different isolation in terms of the network within our data centers. So there are a lot of plans, and there are a lot of flavors. And if you have any of those questions, I'll ask if we can park licensing questions just in terms of what is available. But if you have questions on what type of user can do X and who has the rights and those kind of things, those are great questions. So don't hesitate to ask really anything licensing-wise. But we've done a lot of work under the covers so that we can have increased scale, both in size of customers, size of how much content that you put in there per each customer or per tenant, and some of the improvements that we're making around the amount of files and how large those files can be. We'll get into that. And then finally, we're not opening up the covers so that you can go into the deep recesses of IT management, what you think of as central admin, but tenant admin, or what you have access, what we call the SharePoint Online Administration Center, has a lot of more knobs you can control, so you can do things more granularly. And we've also opened up a couple of interesting ports, which I'll talk about in a second. But we do see this as the first version of SharePoint that is really the most service-ready release that we've ever put out there. So this is just a very high level. When we switch over to demo, I'll show you one thing that we've used as some raw data that we'll be publishing out in what we call the service description, which is really just a 30-page document currently today that walks you through what SharePoint Online is. This is just a swag at some features. There are about 230 that we track and market. So this is really just a flavor of them. And this is really all of the new stuff. So we have a lot of stuff that is continued, great features that, of course, you expect from SharePoint. These are a lot of the new features, and I'll walk through a few of them and, of course, show you in demo. And the big bubble on the right-hand side is really Big Brother or big peers to us that I mentioned. Not to forget that this is an integrated experience with Link, Exchange, and, of course, Office as a subscription. You don't have to get all of that. It doesn't mean that when you buy Office 365 or starting to work with it, you can get some things standalone or individual. But a lot of value and a lot of scenarios open up when you really use them as an integrated experience. So if you saw Jeff Teeper yesterday, a lot of what he showed, I'm just going to re-emphasize, he did show everything from our Amsterdam data center. A lot of the demo that I'll be doing here is actually coming out of Chicago, so I'm a little bit closer. They just were a little bit more daring in the keynote. But everything from looking at the SharePoint 2010 to SharePoint 2013 release, all new features, all feature crews, all code that was new and going into 2013 was intended for the service, not just first or only, but it had to work in the service. So there really is just one or two features that I can think of that were built new for 2013, but everything else, if it didn't work in the cloud, then it wasn't going to make the cut. Or it was just going to be built until they figured out how we can get it into the cloud. So that's a really good thing so that we stop having the gap, which I'll talk about next. But if you look across here, some of the things that are actually only in online is another thing that you should be aware of. Some of these features are now going to come first to SharePoint Online, and then at some point be able to port down into SharePoint on-premises if that's where you're deployed. It doesn't mean that we're holding back and not wanting to get it to our on-premises customers. But SharePoint Online for us is really where it's a huge deployment vehicle. And if you can imagine, this is one of the largest installations of SharePoint deployment across the world, across 42 markets, multiple data centers, all in an incredible service fabric that is managed by a handful of people that do a great job making sure that SharePoint is up and running. And there's a lot to it beyond features that have gone into some significant improvements in terms of when we go to do upgrade, when we're adding a regular security patch from the SQL team, when we're taking some integration pieces from the Exchange team and making sure those work. The amount of downtime that we've taken in the past, you'll see that get less and less over time. So those are a lot of improvements, but what you see on the screen here is really a set of features. So guest links is now the ability to share anonymously. So previously we've been able to share a site where when you invite somebody who is not a part of your company, they can sign in with a username and password. Now we can do what's called guest links, where you can invite somebody to either just view a document and they don't have to sign in. It'll just open up in the Office web app of choice. If you want them to sign in, you can at the document level. If you want them to be able to only view, you can do that. If you want them to be able to edit, you can do that. You could even co-author anonymously, which is kind of the extreme of the use case of guest links. Another thing to point out is the work we've been doing around hybrid search. So we had the ability, of course, to search content across all site collections in SharePoint Online already. And we have the ability to do a lot of different ways of configuring on-premises up to the level of what we had in the past, the product called FAST. So if you had FAST deployed on-premises and you were using SharePoint Online in the cloud, they were a bit of a walled environment where you could go in one environment if you knew how to get to a SharePoint Online site or you knew that you were in an online site. You could search for content. It would give you the results from that area. If you went then on-premises, you would, of course, get a different set of results. Now with hybrid search, we have the ability to do what's called a federated query, where we send out a query to the both indexes in online and in the cloud or on-prem, and then get a result set back that at least lets you know there's a lot of content out there, and the relevancy is still in context of the relevancy of on-premises content and the relevancy of online, but at least the end user will be able to see everything around the company, especially if they don't know that they're in one site or the other. We do have the ability to do now PowerShell. PowerShell at the admin level in the SharePoint Online Admin Center. It's a specific PowerShell program called the SharePoint Online Management Console. And it just gives you the ability to do everything that you can do in the SharePoint Online Admin Center, but in bulk. So if I wanted to create 10 site collections at once, and I wanted to apply a security group and give them all 100 gigs of storage, I could do that with the right script, and it would just magically happen, as opposed to how we do it currently in market, where you have to go to the UI and do all of that manually. So bringing PowerShell is pretty powerful. We've improved what we can do with BCS. So BCS is a service that we do to connect to on-premises line of business applications like CRM or SAP. And you can use BCS now to go also directly to SQL Azure. In the past, we had to use a middle point, a WCF endpoint. And now we can go direct to SQL Azure. The other thing that we're bringing on the right-hand side in the green, yeah, you're right, is we're bringing native mobile apps. So they showed yesterday in the keynote the Windows Phone app, which is called the SharePoint Newsfeed app. And that connects to the social feed of everything that you subscribe to, whether it's just your personal site newsfeed, or if you subscribe and follow other people or other team sites. That'll come down to these devices for Windows Phone 7.5 and 8, iOS, which includes iPad and iPhone, and the Windows 8. We are building an immersive app as well. In terms of BI, we're bringing Power Pivot and Power View. So if you're an Excel fan, these are pretty powerful tools in how you can build really nice, rich dashboards in Excel and publish them up to SharePoint Online and expose them more like a web page using some of the web app technology. And with Power View, and one of the things that I'll show you, you'll see it gives you a nice, rich experience for people who are coming to get certain sets of data. We're also bringing Project Online. Any project fans out there? Few? So Project Online has actually been ready to go to the cloud for a while, and the cloud needed to be ready for it, and now it is. So Project Online has a nice integration by default on SharePoint, and in SharePoint Online, it's just an add-on that you would get where it creates a separate site collection. There's a separate web app called the Project Web App. And so you can do a lot of work on Project on the desktop, publish it up to Project Online, and your end users would then just be able to navigate the site just as any other in SharePoint Online. But a lot of great tools in Project Online, and I believe there's some about 4 or 5 Project Online sessions, and the team is here. If you're really interested in that, it's a great team, and they can take you pretty deep on that. From a developer's perspective, everything that was built for the developer in SharePoint 2013, the new cloud app model, also translates into the cloud, and you saw a lot of that in the demo. And basically what Scott was focusing on was intentionally not just to build for Azure, but to really build for something that SharePoint Online could consume, so you could build pretty rich applications, rich solutions, without impacting the service. And that's one area where we really try to balance pretty heavily, where we want people to build custom solutions, but we also are pretty aware that we also want the service to be up for 99.9% of the time or better. So the balance between being able to offload where that code runs was very important, both to the service and to the types of applications people wanted to build. And so by being able to take advantage of the cloud app model and not have that be where you can't do it in online, you absolutely can do that in online. So that's just a touch on a few of these. This is where I wanted to pause, and I hope you have questions, and I hope you're not shy to ask them. Whether they're about anything you see here or really just about anything, I'm going to intentionally pause a few times. And if no questions, I'll certainly plug away, but I really want you to leave here with no questions unanswered. Yeah? Guest links, yes. Currently, it's just for documents. So the question was, is guest links only available for documents, or is it for pages, wikis, and lists and other items? Right now, you could share out, but not anonymously, to get people access to a page. The only page that we can share anonymously, and I say that loosely, is the public website. So if you put something on the public website, and one example is if you create a page on your public website that maybe is about an event that you did, one of the things you can do is you can create an anonymous link on a PowerPoint, and then you can take an embed code and put that onto a public page, and then other things around that PowerPoint might be something, but I don't want to cheat the answer. The feature was written so that you can share docs anonymously, but we do have the public website, which is, of course, is anonymous as well. It's a good question. Yeah?
How do solutions work? We have some in-house customers, as well as third-party managers.
Yep. So the question was, how do the solutions work? And part of it is the ecosystem that we're also now readying, which may be your team. We certainly are working with a lot of ISVs and, of course, a lot of IT shops from big and small customers all across the board. So the historical where we started was about a year and a half ago. We run what's called the Ignite training. And it's for two things. It's basically to start to share, here's what the new cloud app model is. It's also to reassure people that your full trust code isn't going anywhere. And it's also to reassure that the sandbox is not going away. So I'm going to I'll get to your answer in a second, but we do still support the sandbox. So if somebody has written a sandbox solution in SharePoint Online today, when we go to upgrade to the 2013 platform, those sandboxes will, of course, carry over and keep working. If on premises you had built a solution previously, then, of course, your full trust code, will go through the upgrade, and you'll either know how to do it or follow the steps that we've published. And again, you'll just have what you had before. Thinking about the future, a lot of the guidance that we're starting to give, both in these trainings and everything that you'll find, if you go to a site called dev.office.com, is really just to articulate what is the cloud app model, and from a developer's perspective, what are the tools you need and what are the patterns that you want to follow. The biggest pattern is this just is not code that's running on SharePoint anymore. It could be a machine that's under your desk, if that happens to be where you've got your app server. Of course, it could be Azure, it could be Amazon Web Services, it could be wherever you might be running this code. When you start to write the apps, you're actually going to write it in a fashion that we're publishing all the documentation of how you push and pull content in and out of SharePoint Online, all the authentication mechanisms that you need, all of the transfer mechanisms, and beyond the getting into the Visual Studio stuff, which is not my area. We also have what's called a developer site. So in SharePoint Online, one of the hardest requests that we've gotten is, I want a production environment and I want a duplicate test environment. For a lot of reasons, that's challenging for us, because it's separate tenancies and separate names, and there's also a cost to it. So the balance is we have now the ability to create a separate site collection that we just call the developer site, and it actually delivers all of the developer material that you need using a new tool called Napa, which is a Visual Studio Lite in the browser. And so you have all the tools that you need on the web page, and you really load up Napa like an app, and you write just like Visual Studio. So it is still a developer's approach. And if you need to, you can always export and go to Visual Studio. But a lot of the publishing to test and debug is right there in the web browser. And then when you're done, you can publish to the store, or you can publish as an output of whatever that file package is called. I don't know. And then you can sideload that to an on-premises server. Or if you're packaging it to resell it, then that's when you want to publish into the store and get it out there. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's the real easy is if it's not 100 of them or the same one 100 times, you could just go to the site collection. There's a thing called the solution gallery. You upload the WSP, click activate, and then whatever your solution did, it might have been a template, it might have been a web part or a workflow activity. But whatever it does, once you've activated it, if it's to your liking, I would first test it in that site collection that's just for the developer, and then put it into a production site collection. But once you activate it, then you're done. And not many people have access to the solution gallery. It's more of the developer creates the WSP, hand it to IT pro or a site collection owner, and then they can put it in the solution gallery. Going forward, even some of the simple components you might want to develop in a different way. So it's not a WSP running on SharePoint, primarily for that reason of if you want that same solution in 100 site collections. That might be something to consider where you actually are hosting it and then pointing to it as opposed to uploading 100 times. First here.
So the date, I guess the full-on release date is that the first month?
Office 365 will ship on, that's the one question I can't answer. And I'll give you an idea of where we're at so I can half answer it. That is the one thing where, my pay grade where I'm at, you're going to wait for Steve Ballmer to say. But we did RTM SharePoint on 10/11/12, and that was intentional because it was a fun date and it was the right target. So we are RTM, and it's now out there on an MSDN volume licensing. So the RTM bits are out there, and on the on the service, we're actually starting to now get the RTM builds or a flavor of RTM because we're still working on some of the getting it into the cloud. But if you go to the preview today and sign up for Office 365, the preview, you would see the latest build that we have in the service. And that's actually what I'm showing off of here. So I can't claim it as the same version of RTM, but you get a sense of where we're at. So we're readying the service, but we're still running it in preview. And I just got to repeat what they said in the keynote, that we're working on getting it out next year.
So, just so I understand the vernacular, you said Office 365. Does Office 365 include SharePoint Online, or are they separate?
That's a great question, and that's exactly what I want to make sure you know. SharePoint Online is just a service inside Office 365. The paradigm you can think of if you think of Office on the client, Word, PowerPoint, OneNote, Publisher, all those things, you think of it as either the program that you're running or, yes, I have Office. And when somebody says, yes, I have Office, that means I've got PowerPoint, Word, Outlook, and OneNote usually, and then flavors give you more programs. But in Office 365 is 4 main servers running as a service, and that's SharePoint Online, Exchange Online, Link Online, and then Office's subscription, which means you can go to your My Site and click Download Office, and it'll click to run install in a couple of minutes. So the deployment mechanism is very different, and it's a subscription model for the client. So it is the full client once you install it on your desktop. It includes the Office web apps, and there are tie-ins to other services like CRM Online, Intune, which is to manage desktops from the cloud. But primarily when we talk Office 365, it's those core 4. So yes, absolutely. What we're talking about here is SharePoint Online as a part of Office 365. But from a licensing or a skewing perspective, if that was part of your question, you can get SharePoint Online standalone. So if you just want SharePoint Online, you've got your mail running in Hotmail forever or other service, Gmail, Yahoo, you name your flavor. Or if you've got in-house mail, and I don't know the half of those names, your mail will run as it has been, and then you can invest in SharePoint Online. And when you buy it, you just are buying SharePoint Online. When you trial it, you trial everything. So you can try everything, but when you actually go to buy, you just uncheck the services that you don't want. And in preview, there's only one flavor. It's everything, because we want you to get everything. Just kidding. Back there. Black shirt, yep.
Can you just tell me what the experience might be if you're going to do like some kind of hybrid model? Where I'm coming from here is I work for a company, Fortune 100, very, very, very large, and we're not going to be switching over to this anytime quickly.
Yeah.
But I could easily see saying, we'll take like one line of business, 500 people, and we'll do this. But what would the experience be like if we have 25,000 people using the normal, on-prem, Exchange, Outlook, Office, and we have 400, 500 people in this. What's the experience like for both sides? And can it be pretty easily combined?
Yes, the answer is yes, and I'll walk you through some of the things that you would have to establish, and then some of the things that you can then take advantage of. And this is true for Exchange, Link, and SharePoint. And Exchange is a little bit more advanced than we are. They call the Exchange Federation coexistence. So you can have mailboxes, maybe C-level, running on-prem, and then from certain level down, or just branch offices all around the world, deployed into the cloud. But everybody would be able to see everybody's FreeBusy information. Same with Link, you'd be able to see whether their presence is running, and you can be able to chat with them. And we hope the end user experience is just, hey, I'm looking for Bob or Jill, and I'm sending them mail, and I'm talking to them. And it's the same in SharePoint. You're looking for content, you're looking for people, you're tracking projects, you're doing lists and stuff. But a lot of that content might be coming from somewhere else. And it's very common for SharePoint. And in our first instance of Office 365, we did not ship BCS. In our first service update, we brought BCS to the cloud, but about half of BCS. But the main one, which is the ability to connect to a line of business. So again, from an end user, I might be just looking at a list of data or some form that is populated by some information coming from an on-prem ERP system. If I sign into the site and I have permissions to get there, you've got to take your 25,000 and your 500 and make sure that they're all in the same Active Directory. And we support Active Directory Federation. So my experience of going to one site, maybe it's a portal that's hosted in online, and it's got a CRM database that's just view only, and I'm a salesperson, and I can, of course, see customer X and what's their phone number. And I turn to on-prem, and maybe I'm going in to fill out my time card, or maybe I'm conversing with the HR system, and it's asking me to fill out a form, and that's something that either by the nature of the system or by nature of your own privacy rules is not something that moves to the cloud yet. So that person would turn to that site, again, to the end user. Hopefully it's a common sign-in experience or no sign-in at all because the Active Directory Federation. And now they're just signing into that site. And that's a SharePoint site hosted and connected maybe to something. It could be just a form and a list, or it could be something more complicated. Where we start to get a little bit more complex is when you actually start about real integration, where what I was talking about a little bit earlier around hybrid search, where if I go to my site, and if you've moved your MySite workload to the cloud, I type in the text box for a search, and I hit, go find marketing documents. The crawler is actually going to send a query. Sorry, the query is going to get sent to both the online index and the on-prem index. This is configuration, and there's setup to do, obviously, to take advantage of that. But we've built that connector piece so that you can talk to SharePoint on-premises from a search perspective. So some of it is just the single sign-on experience gives you a lot, and so I would pay attention to design and navigation. So for the end user to be able to not get lost, like, oh, now I'm here and I have no clue on how to get back to over here. But if there's a link in the navigation that just happens to be to a site online, on premises, then navigation becomes pretty important. There's obviously some developer side of it when you're working with BCS. Some of that is developing code so that systems can talk to each other. And then with the search, it's an IT setup and config. We try to make that really easy. And there's a whole session on hybrid actually going on right now. And then there's a hybrid search talk. Yeah, run. But the guy that you really want to see talk here or find time with him, his name is Brad Stevenson. And Brad's given a great talk about hybrid all up. And he talks about the architecture and things you can do and maybe stay away from. But the whole idea is we know you're not going to go all greenfield online. But we hope that you try it. And just to give you the last little bit of how we're doing at Microsoft, just to give you a flavor. So we're 90,000 plus now, and we've got obviously people around the world and people on traveling and mobile and whatnot. And we're starting to move all of our team sites, all of our portal sites, and some of our internal, like the HR department fill out this form, or we have a review period where we put in all of the commitments of things we'll do each year. Those are some properties that are flagged to move to the cloud as well, because they're going to run on SharePoint Online, and that's both our best foot forward. We think, obviously, you eat your own dog food. There's that side of it. But the reality is the economy of scale actually will save us money as well, moving to the cloud. But it's going to be, a multi-year process. But I'm on Exchange Online already. I'm on Link Online already, and a lot of what I do is on SharePoint Online. There's still some systems that if I get a request to go fill out something, it's an on-prem. But my experience as an end user is, the IT department's done a nice job. And the behind the scenes, obviously, is then our cloud team has done a nice job to enable the MSIT team. So it's very possible, it's very supported, and there's going to be a lot of information about it here. And of course, once you go, we also are publishing a lot of new TechNet articles that talk about hybrid. Great question. Sorry if it was a long answer, but it's an area that we've thought a lot about. Question?
Public presence sites and anonymous access.
Uh-huh.
I played around with the preview of it, and I can see that I can set that up
Yep.
and bind the host name to it. How many different site collections will you be able to set up that are distinctly different public sites using one tenant?
Yeah. So right now we are bound to one public site per tenant. Some of the information they shared at the keynote may influence what we can do in the future. They didn't share a whole lot, and to be honest, that's not an area I know a ton about. But I know one of the requests that we've made just from a planning perspective is I have the potential to have up to 3,000 site collections now in the future. And what's stopping me from being just able to list this one's public, this one's private, this one's an external sharing? And I know that that's where you're probably headed and wanting. But currently, and when we first initially release this next, the new Office 365, it'll still be a single site collection for a public website. There is, of course, at a document level, and that's, sort of hedging bets that, that might help here and there. But those are very anonymous, and you'll see me show that a little bit later. But it's a great question. It's something that we want to get beyond, because it shouldn't be any different. It should just be a flip of a bit. Yeah?
Strictly from a feature standpoint, why should somebody choose SharePoint on-prem versus 365?
It is my next slide. And it'll talk about it at a feature perspective, but I'll go into scenarios as well. Yeah?
You know, it's like that SharePoint online subscription. Do you automatically get Project Online? Or is it a separate subscription?
It'll be a separate subscription. So the question was, if you get Project Online, do you automatically get Project Online? And it will be a separate add-on. That cost information will be coming. In the preview, if you go try it out now, there's two ways to get Project Online. You just start at Project Online and get it, and it has a dependency of deploying Office 365 for you. So from a preview perspective, you'll just go to SharePoint Online Admin Center, and you'll already see the Project Online site collection, and you can add more. If you go and get SharePoint Online within the Office 365 preview and you don't go the path of Project Online, we publish just a little documentation because it's not wired from the commerce perspective. It will be. But effectively, when we're in market, you'll just be able to say, I like SharePoint Online, and I like Project Online, and I want to add that to my tenancy. And then it'll do the magic behind the scenes, and then all of a sudden you'll see that same site collection. So depending on how you start, you can accomplish it today. If you've already got a tenancy, you just got to find out how to add it to it. And of course, in market, it would be you could buy just Project Online or have SharePoint Online and add on Project Online. Yeah? Question?
SkyDrive Pro, scope, libraries only.
So SkyDrive Pro is a real interesting one. It is a branding exercise that we have already done, so the decision's made. I think it's a really great branding for what it really is. It's your work documents shared in SharePoint. There are two sides of SkyDrive Pro. There is when I click on my SkyDrive Pro and go to it, I can see it through the web browser. It just says SkyDrive. SkyDrive Pro just means these files are stored in SharePoint on premises or SharePoint Online. I can also sync that personal library down to my desktop on a Windows PC. And you'll see a folder that says SkyDrive, and then we take your tenant name. And so it'll say SkyDrive at Contoso. So I have a pretty broad and good access from my phone, from my PC, and of course, any web browser. There's also a technology that currently is delivered in the Office client called Folder Sync. So SkyDrive Pro holistically can mean just your personal documents, but it also, we're trying to incorporate that it is also this folder sync technology, because the folder sync is just an application that runs to be able to talk to team site libraries. So if you go to a regular team site and you click sync, you have to have the Office client currently to have that work. And they're reviewing and working on how we can have that just be just a component you go get. It originally just was built as a part of Office. But then holistically, SkyDrive Pro, at least from a messaging perspective, is your content that you care about from a work perspective that's stored in SharePoint. A lot of that focus, obviously, in the visual will be your personal documents. But SkyDrive Pro is also, part of if you're offlining or taking stuff from a team site as well. But the concepts are no different. You're just syncing a library, and we're just changing the deltas, so it's really efficient. But the initial experience is very tied around your personal site, and of course your personal documents. The other thing I'll throw out there, because I'll have it a little bit later, but if we don't get to it, is SkyDrive Pro, where your personal documents are, will go from 500 megabytes today to 7 gigs when we go into market with the new version. So we're giving you a lot more space, and that's across the board. That's for anybody that has a My Site. We'll have 7 gigs of storage. Whether they use it, we're interested to know, but that's a lot of what the SkyDrive team is doing, and that's where you'll see where we're working on getting parity, but also, over time, actually having it be just a service that we can consume. Yeah, back there. Yeah, white shirt, or white jacket.
Can you talk about the business intelligence workload, especially as it relates to data that may or may not be in the cloud?
A few things that are on the slide are Power Review, Power Pivot. Those are the big BI features that are new and we've brought to the cloud. We've also always supported Excel services. The one current blocker, and the one that we would like to unblock, back to the hybrid question, is being able to use those same services on data that's stored off cloud. And that could be SQL Azure, it could be an Oracle database, it could be blah, And I'm not the best on all BI scenarios. But the feature set, of course, works on-prem to connect to whatever data source you have, as big or as small, and obviously very performant. The area that we get into from the cloud is being able to test and support effectively the transfer rates that you would expect from BI solutions, which a lot of times are very different from people posts and document, upload and download. And so getting that to be performant on something that is reliable and also a good experience. But the feature set is there. The ability to, of course, connect to external data sources is there. But the offering in Office 365 won't initially be there. But it is something that the team is working on. And I would expect in a 1 to 2 service updates after we go to general availability with this version, or the new Office 365, is when we'll start to, you'll start to have those capabilities.
So to be clear, the data refresh in Power Pivot will not support data refresh?
So Power Pivot, as far as the Power Pivot gallery, is not yet supported in online. But Power View and Excel, the Excel web app, which I know sounds light to maybe what you're asking, but the Excel web app is more significantly like Excel from a data experience, and I can show you an example, but it is bound to data that's currently in online. Yep. Way in the back.
How are updates and service packs handled? Because typically in an on-premise solution, you may find a hotfix from Microsoft, download it, and
Yep.
apply to your environment. And the second phase is, if there's a service pack, you may install a service pack in a sandbox or test environment to make sure it doesn't break any customization.
Correct.
How are those handled online?
Yeah. I'm going to answer your question, then I'm going to answer one question I was hoping somebody asked, and that I think you'll like the second part as well. So he was just asking about what are the upgrades like, or what are the updates when they apply. And certainly there's the experience that probably a lot of you have had of how you do that on-prem, and certainly maybe the hesitancy of when you do that in terms of downtime or impact in terms of testing. So, of course, the value of SharePoint Online is we do all that for you. And the gentleman who actually does that all for you is sitting right there. Doron, you want to raise your hand? So we've got a lot of the engineering guys. So if you've had a really good experience, go tell Doron. If you've had a bad experience, come talk to me. I don't want you to bug Doron about that. They already know about it. So what the team does, obviously, and we do this more than you will know, it's sometimes a quick fix that just is a config change that has no impact, so those are easy. But certainly when it comes to what we call service update, sometimes that means putting in the latest CU, the cumulative update, or putting in the latest service pack. To be honest, to a lot of our SharePoint Online customers, they don't know that terminology. And it's not because they can't go read about it, and it's not because, but they don't experience the act of, ooh, here's Service Pack 1, and what do I need to do? They're going to just get a notification in email that says, in 2 weeks, we're going to be touching the service, and there will be a read-only window of 30 minutes. And we'll let you know when we get closer. Then we send another email, and this is to the admin, not to everybody. And that will say, in the next 24 to 48 hours, we're going to now be doing that 30-minute thing we told you about. And we put it in a way that if you didn't get that first email, it doesn't hopefully surprise you too much. But it really is just an impact of 30 minutes in market. We have seen a little bit different in the preview if you've been experiencing that. I don't want to cheat and say that we're not working on making sure that we continue to do that. But so far, every demo that I've been giving, everything that I have done on the preview has been a really good experience, and I don't always call to say, hey, Doron, we've got the SharePoint conference. Can you make sure that all services are firing? Because I trust the service is up and running. But when it comes to patching and upgrading and this and that, literally it's abstracted from you, and hopefully that's a good thing. If you're interested in what we do, we do publish what features are coming. We have talks that share how we run the service. Doron will have a service, and actually now his buddy Ben is back. So those two guys are going to be giving great talks on how we actually run SharePoint Online, both from how do we configure and deploy, and how do we then manage and operate it when we're actually running the live service. And there's a lot more to SharePoint Online, of course, than just the product or the service now. There's everything from your provisioning, onboarding, there's the monitoring systems, there's the folks that obviously are 24/7 from support perspective, and then of course what Doron and Ben focus on is if there's any escalations and making sure that all pistons are firing. So the second part of the question that I'm going to add on that you didn't ask, but I think it's just good to know if people are using currently in market Office 365, the experience that you'll have moving from Office 365 now and Office 365 at a point in time in next year will be more on your terms. So we still have to flip a switch that says, hey, 15 is here, and we'll send out a lot of information ahead of time, but when we really get there, we'll just basically notify everybody that's a tenant and say, if you'd like to take advantage of SharePoint Online, you can now take advantage of the 15 features. And you can do that site collection by site collection, and you can do it literally just through the UI and click upgrade, or you can run PowerShell. And if you've created 200 site collections to date, you can run upgrade on across all 200, or 198 of them, and then your main company portal, maybe you want to go and do a significant testing on it. So you can do what we call a site collection copy, test on that in the 15 mode, and then go back to your 14 one and then commit. The one caveat you should know is once you commit to 15, then you're on the train. It's a good train to be on, but just if you do have things that you're wanting to test a little bit more, don't hit the green button, hit the yellow button. Yeah. Okay.
And I'm one of those customers that is currently, and I'm really concerned because we just moved to Office 365 and it was over 6,000 sites, so you can imagine. Yeah. And I just heard in one of the presentations that the need for the upgrade, you need to copy the databases, the content databases into a new, and that process is getting me a little nervous, I have to say. So is it going to be those 30 minutes for that upgrade? Or is probably we are going to go down and be down for like a weekend?
No. So what you're talking about, that site collection copy, is for a site collection that you do want to do testing on before you commit to 15. That's the site collection copy. It literally is a full copy of that site collection. Your 14, your existing one, doesn't do anything. And then you just turn to that. It's throw away everything. But it's your content. And so you would go and do the testing on that one. But if you've got some that you haven't done significant customization or configuration, or you just it's just a team site, and we do a really good job if it's a team site that going from 14 to 15 we know everybody's going to do, or sorry, from 2010 to 2013. And there might be where you just try out a few, even create new ones, and today that are just dummy, so that you can see what the experience is when you just commit, when you hit the green button off the bat. But if you hit the yellow button where it says, give me a copy, do the test, depending on how big that site collection is, we are making a full copy of that, which takes X amount of time, and applying it to the new user interface. And then you do your testing. When you go and run the PowerShell command, depending on the size of the content database per site collection, it'll take time, and I'm not fluent enough on what those times are to calculate.
Hey, Mark.
Yeah.
I think we heard her question a little differently.
Okay.
Hey, I'm Ben. Doron and I, we actually do the upgrade thing. Oh, you're on D?
I mean, what?
Are you on?
Phil, that's Phil. Oh, I know him.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
So actually, I
Yeah.
didn't understand what Phil is saying. Is that you're on SharePoint Online, the dedicated plan?
Yes, we are.
Yeah, which will have a different upgrade path than what I've been describing. I should have
okay.
been very clear. Office 365, in a lot of what I'm talking about, is the enterprise offering, not the dedicated offering.
So, I mean,
but doesn't discredit that you will actually. Phil can probably, if you want to take it offline,
Okay.
and Ben can walk you through a little bit better what the dedicated experience will be. But it will be a different. It'll be similar because the product obviously offers and performs upgrade in a similar way. But it's managed a little bit differently because you're on an isolated farm.
I
Okay.
think the question is actually a really apropos one
Yeah.
for MT, or sorry, I'm using acronyms, for the general SharePoint Online offering. So the question I heard was, hey, we have 6,000 site collections that we've now migrated into the system. When you go do this upgrade, are you going to take me down for a weekend to do that? And the answer is no. We're not going to take you down for a weekend. So the sort of fundamental thing about upgrade in 2013 is that the DB schema upgrade and the site collection upgrades have been decoupled. So we are able to do the DB schema level upgrade under the covers without any change or impact to what your users see. And we can do that pretty quickly. So that'll be a maintenance window, maybe around 30 minutes, maybe an hour, that you'll get notified of, like, okay, we're going to do that under the covers. Once that's done, you then have the ability to upgrade on a site collection by site collection basis, and you can choose to do those upgrades on your time, at your pace, when it's convenient and for your company. So you can do them one at a time. You can batch them up using PowerShell. You can pick a weekend to do them. You can try it out beforehand. We have a bunch of health check rules that run that you can run ahead of each one to understand. Okay, if I did customizations to this? Is it going to work? So we've really tried to sort of decouple that and put a lot of the power in your hands to control when those actual upgrades happen.
Yep. What about my sites? Yeah, so those will go through. I don't know actually if my sites will have an individual experience or if my sites will just get upgraded. Do you guys know? Because they are an individual. So my site is a personal site collection. So they will, of course, go through upgrade. But I don't think that there's a individualized experience to upgrade the individual site collections by themselves.
My sites are a little bit different.
Yep.
When you hit the button, there's a point at which you hit the button for your tenancy that says, hey, I want to roll my tenancy forward to 15, and that's when Exchange flips and tenant admin flips, and et cetera. And that, I believe, is when the MySite host flips, and then we go into a queuing process where the MySites get upgraded at that time.
Yeah, so the answer is no, but is also that the site collection that will get upgraded is that MySite host that a lot of the experience will come from. So it really is the upgrade of that single site collection, but of course the others will go through upgrade as well. Yeah.
I have a customer from mainland China, and they're considering Office 365, especially SharePoint Online.
Mm-hmm.
I have two questions. So first, do you know the availability date for 365 in mainland China?
I don't know the availability date. I certainly know that I believe we've announced. What we're doing
we
there.
announced like a
but I don't. I actually don't in my head have a date,
Yeah,
and
but
I
do
don't
you have
think I
like
would be able to share it.
Okay.
I don't.
3
I
months, 6 months, or okay.
I get in trouble even if I give you some narrow date.
Okay, that's fine. That's
Yep.
fine. Actually, one of their concerns is that they want to have the ownership of their data, so their data in cloud. So actually, they asked me about something like, is there possible that we can download our content data or content databases, or do a dump of the documents back to their on-premise environment? Is that possible?
So there's nothing that we offer directly out of the service to do that, but it would just be a reverse migration. So there are tools to get content into the cloud, and those same tools can just treat SharePoint Online as your source, and your destination is just wherever you want to place it. And there's rules and things that you need to do to make sure that you're using the right tools and you've got the right different things in place for the destination, so that you have space and it's the same version that you're going to. But there's no tools that we offer directly where you can say, I want to take my stuff offline.
So,
not the content, but like a
so
whole.
those tools are mainly third-party tools.
Those are third-party tools. They're all actually down in the pavilion. Just to name a few, but you can come across a lot of them. There's AvePoint, Quest, Metalogix, Tsunami, I think, is hosted in or based in Europe.
Okay.
There's a lot of different tools for different things that you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
It could be mail, it could be SharePoint, it could be, and there are a number of different tools that, depending on what it is you're moving, or because if you're moving solutions or apps, there's good analysis tools for what you need to do to prepare to do that. But then from a content perspective, there's just a host of tools that will move content, maintain your metadata, and do that pretty well. And a lot of the movement that we focus on is to the cloud, but the tools don't care. As long as you have permissions to access each environment,
That's right.
then you just are telling it, start from here and go to there.
Okay, great. And another question is
Yeah.
the BCS. So this is kind of like a new feature we added to the SharePoint Online. So BCS is only from SharePoint Online to Windows Azure? Or
Nope. So
SQL
BCS
Azure?
can actually be configured to a number of different line of business applications. There is the requirement to build what's called a WCF endpoint, which just does the BCS talking to service or server of choice.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's CRM, then there's CRM has some specific requirements. If it's SAP, obviously we have an offering called Duet that does some of the work for you.
Okay.
In terms of how you plug them together. But BCS Direct to SQL Azure is just a new feature for this.
Okay,
new release.
so they have some in-house on-premise system, business systems. So all they have to do is create some WCF endpoints and expose that to 365.
It is. I don't want to oversell it. It is, from a developer's perspective, writing that WCF endpoint is just making sure that you're getting that translation talk between the two servers or service. Hosting that, obviously, in the right way so that it's exposed through the firewall in a safe and secure way.
Mm-hmm.
And then sort of wiring up BCS, there's some things that you configure in SharePoint Online from the secure store where you do and set authentication, and then the actual model for what you're talking to that WCF endpoint. So there's work, there's a lot of documentation on how to do it, and obviously very supported in online.
All right, great, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm going to plug just a little bit. We're getting to about a 15-minute mark. And I just want to at least show you a few things, more proof points, not a full demo like you've been seeing. And then turn over, actually, sorry, one slide before that because of some of the questions. So this is, again, just a little bit of a different look at maybe a different set of features, a different way to look at everything that's in SharePoint Online. And the way that we're closing the gap is reflective of just to highlight some of the things that are still on-premises focused. So everything that you see currently on the slide is not a holistic view of all features. Again, it's not like the bubble slide. But it really is just focused on some major things that we've brought to market that are significant portions of each of these workloads. And this is not all workloads. This is not all of SharePoint. But it's just touching on some of the things where, when I hit animation, you'll see some of the things that are still not yet in online, but certainly are things that we're working on. And it really is just to showcase the delta. So if you look from a BI perspective, we don't yet support analytics or performance point. If you look at it from a search perspective, we have brought all of FAST into the cloud because it's just a part of SharePoint now. But we don't yet have the ability to do deep refinement or enhanced relevancy tuning. Those are just features of FAST that we're working on to get to work in online, but currently one of the couple of deltas. From a developer's perspective, and depending on how you look at this, it may not be a terrible thing. Or not something that we're missing, because we think there's going to be a lot of refactoring in terms of next versions of solutions or new solutions built in a different way. But currently we don't support full trust code in online, and there are some components of BCS that we don't yet support, and those primarily are the BCS for profile and BCS for search. From an admin perspective, this is where we hope the delta is actually a good thing. So a different way to look at the slide is not that there's a gap, but it's that you're not managing the service. You're not patching. You're not, keeping the reliability and the uptime. But to be transparent, you also don't have access to central admin, and some of that is obviously giving over control to Microsoft, trusting the service, and a little bit of a different granularity in terms of how you manage the environment. But you have full-on tenant admin control. You, of course, have all of the site collection owner and admin controls, on down to the sites, the lists and the libraries. Those all remain the same. But we are bringing, PowerShell. We have the ability to do information rights management, Of course, we have the recycle bin, so if you delete anything at the site level, or if you delete a whole site collection, you have the ability to self-recover, which used to be a call to support to recover, which we can always do. But now we give you the ability to do it in 2 minutes instead of maybe a day or two, depending on how busy support is. From an internet perspective, one of the questions that was asked earlier was that there is a single site, and that's okay sometimes the way that people deploy even on premises just for a single site. But really the main components when you look at the feature set of the publishing infrastructure, we don't do cross-site scripting, and we don't do the content by search, what they showed in the keynote yesterday, where it's really a dynamic page built on search, not static HTML. But certainly you're looking to bring those. From the ECM workload and the social workload, we're actually pretty confident that we're near parity, if not at parity. And certainly this is not a holistic list, again. But if you look at all the things that we do have now, we do support e-discovery. Not just e-discovery in SharePoint Online, but what they showed in the keynote yesterday, e-discovery across the whole Office 365 suite, which is pretty powerful in terms of if you ever need it, and certainly, I think, a significant offering we hope people are going to be excited about. And then the last thing I'll talk about here is just the fact that we didn't support Record Center. And it would really boil down to we didn't support the Record Center template. And the template just had some requirements that we weren't ready to support in online. But if you go now and create a site collection or multiple site collections to have a larger Record Center, we support both the template and, of course, the design and how you would store a lot of content in online from a records management perspective. I'm going to keep going and just show you a few things here. And switch over. Let me know, hopefully, when that comes through. Sorry, it's DVI. There we go. So this is my site, and I'm going to go pretty fast here because I want to save a little bit of time for a fun thing that we're going to do. But I want to show you a little bit about what I've been talking about. So this is an Office 365 tenant in the Office 365 preview right now. And if you just look up here, the typical way you can see if it's SharePoint Online is that's my tenant name, SP Reviewer. -my just means this is my site. And then .sharepoint.com is some of the IP that we've reserved so that when you are in Office 365, if you're Contoso, it would be contoso-my.sharepoint.com. Obviously, you can have longer names, shorter names, and sometimes that name is, or always that name is very important because this is now the structure of your intranet URL system, URLs. And as I navigate around, hopefully just if you peek up and you can see the URL, we're just navigating to different site collections, sometimes staying within the same site collection. But first, here's my news feed, and I'll just do. And if you start to see where it starts to autocomplete, SPC12 as a hashtag, and hello at Mary Jo Foley. She did a nice review about the keynote yesterday. So I'll post that down, and that's going to do two things. It's taking advantage of a tag that was already there, so if I wanted to go see other conversations on that tag, I could. I can click on that, and you'll see other items, and as I hover, it's a little hard with the way that the screen is cut off in projection, but you'll see that we've got a number of conversations going where people are mentioning SharePoint Conference 12. And also, if I go to my Everyone, you should see the post that I just did. I can also choose to follow Mary Jo Foley, which I do in real life, so I'll do it here in demo. And what that means is now everything that she posts will now come to my news feed. If she has a new document, if she has a status post, if she likes something, and just because I'm vain, I'm going to like my own post. But you can see, you like this. It's so friendly. It tells you everything. So from a newsfeed perspective, obviously it is what SharePoint 2013 is. No different in SharePoint Online. Question around what the SkyDrive Pro is. This is my SkyDrive Pro in my demo account. And I like to, any Fringe fans out there? The Fringe, the TV show? Fringe. All right. So I know where you're going to be Friday at 9 o'clock. So what I like to think of when I demo is this is the other mark that you see on screen. And that's an inside joke for those Fringe fans. But just to go in here and take a look at a little bit of content that I have in here. I've got PowerPoints, Excel, Word. I can also have the concept of following documents. So these are not documents that I've uploaded, but these are documents that I've come across that are stored in a separate site collection, and I've clicked follow. And I'll show you that here in a second. So the last thing I want to show you in SkyDrive, the SkyDrive Pro, is what this looks like on my desktop. So if I go in and I look at my regular SkyDrive, sorry, this is other Mark, so he doesn't have his SkyDrive set up. But when I look at SkyDrive Pro, you'll see it's the same set of content that I had here when I go back to my main SkyDrive Pro. So you'll see there's the 2 folders. Go in, and this is all now being synced. And if I worked on it in the web through the web app, it would, of course, make the change to the primary source, which is stored in the cloud. And it would sync down that delta change to my SkyDrive Pro folder here. And I can add folders. The fun thing to do here is if I want to go and just use, so to be clear, I'm working on a Windows 8 PC on the File Explorer. I'm going to click New PowerPoint. So I'm creating a new file. And I'm just going to say SPC 2012 new PPTX. And let that sink down. And you'll see it goes wherever it's bouncing around. See where it's got that kind of cyclical circle? That means it's now publishing and it's saving it to the cloud automatically. It should turn to a green check mark. So it just did that check mark. And now when we minimize and drill into this folder that I was just working with, we'll see that document. It's now right here. So it's a pretty seamless and very fast. Granted, that's a pretty small file, but you'll see speeds and feeds that are really impressive and make it very useful from a usability perspective. The other things I can start to do with content is to take advantage of the Office web apps. So I'm just going to show you one here. This is the PowerPoint web app, and it should load a PowerPoint that I've been working on, which of course is the other Mark's presentation. And you can see here I can always go to full PowerPoint if I need it, or I can stay in the Office web apps to edit. I can share from here, so the questions earlier around sharing content, this opens up a sharing dialog that then I can plug in anybody's email address here and have that go out to somebody that either is on the document level where they can either edit or view. And then you see this checkbox where it says require sign-in. If I uncheck that, which I'm going to save for the fun giveaway that we have, this is actually going to send just what we call guest links. So this will send a guest link to whomever you put in this. If I put in mark@yahoo.com or test@test.com, the one that Jeff used, and I gave them edit rights, they could then go into a document anonymously, stored in SharePoint Online, managed by you, but accessed anonymously, and potentially even co-authoring at the same time. So pretty cool. The other thing that's kind of fun to see, and I think it builds on a nice experience, if I go back to that same PowerPoint, or I'll go to actually I'll go back to this one because I know it's got content, is I can also embed this from a sharing perspective. I'm going to grab this code, and I'm going to go back to my site. And I'm going to go to my blog. And I'm going to create a new post. And you'll see here I had already done it, but I'm just going to show you it happening. And then I'm going to insert that same embed code. Hopefully it's still in the clipboard. And it'll give you a little bit of a here's what you're going to post and publish. And then I'm going to click insert. And then publish this one. So just from an end user perspective, I could now publish a new post and go to my news feed and say, hey, check out my new presentation, or hey, check out my new blog post. And as a component of that, I can use the web apps as an embedded experience. And if I had anonymized this PowerPoint, I could also do this on my public website. So if I had said, hey, here's all of the presentations that we did at the event last week, instead of here's a list of a file store or here's a link to download the PowerPoint, they could actually have an experience, and you can size these differently on the page so the end user can navigate through here, and at any time they can pop it up, go to the full PowerPoint web app in view mode, and depending on their permissions, they could edit or not edit. So pretty nice experience through the web apps. The last thing I was going to show you is just a little bit of the admin side of things. So because I am an admin on this environment, I can go into the SharePoint Online environment. And the thing that I'll at least note when I switch between my site, team site, portal, wherever I'm going, even if I go check my mail, which is here's how I would access my mail if I wanted to do it through the browser, you'll notice one of the new things of Office 365 is the top navigation. And that's there doing always whatever you're doing, except when you're in the public side. Of course, we don't have that showing publicly. But when you are working on the public website from an edit perspective, you would have this navigation. So it's easier than ever to navigate right back to your SkyDrive, right back to your news feed. But this is just a glance behind the scenes of what we've done differently from the SharePoint Online Admins console. So here is where you would go to create a new site collection. Here's where you go to manage your user profiles. One of the fun things, I don't know if you noticed when I went to, I'll show you in sites, and then I'll go back. See this top bar? By default, these are only the two that are there, the default team site and the public website. But I've added site mailbox, SharePoint developer, and other, and you can have multiple and it keeps going. If I go back to the SharePoint Online Admin Center and I go to, it's hard, there it is, promoted sites. It's obviously not so pretty here, but from an admin perspective, I'll show you what it looks like to add one of those. So one of the fun ones I did was adding the developer website. And here is the URL that it points to. Here's the name I gave it. And then here's a pointer to that image that I wanted behind the box. And then you can assign an owner, obviously. And then if you have a target audience that you then have refined by permissions, their experience when they see those sites in their My Site might be a different list, so you can manage it across multiple group sets. So that is the quick, very quick tour. There is a ton of other things from a demo perspective that you saw in the keynote. You're going to see it all week. I wanted to spend most of the time focusing on, highlighting a lot of the new features, the new functionality, and of course answering questions. I'm going to switch gears a little bit and hopefully do something fun and do it effectively. So the last thing I'll just show you here before we do that is just a summary of a lot of what we've talked about, or some of the things maybe we didn't talk about. And there's just one animation on here, again, to be fully transparent, is when we come to certain workloads, that one slide that I showed earlier, is we're still working on getting in full parity with on-premises. And that's not just a feature perspective. When it gets to how much content you can store, I've got my very last slide is just where we're at with storage, so you get a sense of what SharePoint Online will be able to do from a content storage capacity. But this is a glance at a feature summary of the entire SharePoint 23 release. Obviously not every feature, but just a summation. And just highlighting a few areas where there's still either a little delta, and just to reemphasize from a management perspective, that's supposed to be a good thing. Not that there's delta, but that you're not managing as much. That's a big value of the cloud. So here is the look at the storage. So the far left is where we are at today in market. And I'll walk pretty quickly through this just so that we don't run out of time here. But we have 10 gigabytes that you get at the base of storage. Every user that has an E license or a P license, this is different tenancies, adds 500 megabytes to the overall storage quota of the tenant. In SkyDrive Pro today, it's 500 megabytes. And as you read left to right, you can see the improvements that we're going to make for the small business offering, which is 1 to 50 users. The mid-market, which is a new SKU for us, a new offering, which is 1 to 250. And then, of course, in the E tenant, you could be still just one person and get the value of E, or you could be up in the hundreds of thousands and still get E. But the numbers, as you go down, then, we do have similar site collection quota limits in terms of that 100 gigs per site collection. We initially, in market, started with 1 terabyte per tenant. Then we increased that to 5 terabytes, and currently in market, we're now supporting 25 terabytes per tenant. And obviously, in the future, we're thinking about making that even larger for customers that have been requesting higher than 25 terabytes. But from a file upload perspective, this is one change where we're currently in design. I don't have a date that this will align to exactly at GA. But one thing that we're working on is how can we get the upload limit up from 250 megabytes to 2 gigabytes. So that's a significant request that we've gotten in terms of the file size. And then finally, the big one before question is the amount of site collections. And why there's a delta? One site collection is really what you get when you invest in the small business. Everything that we do is in that single site collection. For the mid-market SKU, we've enabled so that you can build up to 20 site collections. And in the enterprise, you can have up to 3,000. And we drove down the cost of extra storage if you need more than your initial licensing formula gives you. We brought that down from $250 per gig per month, US dollars, down to 20 cents per gig per month. And we're actively looking even to get that to go down even lower. So I'm going to move to the next slide. Just take one question. I apologize, just glancing at the time. But I think I had a question hand up here first. The top one is if you're just one person, or if you're 5,000, by default, you'll at least have 10 gigabytes of storage space that you can allocate across multiple site collections, or if you're in a small business, you start with 10. Because you're in a single site collection and you can only have 50 users, that's why that max storage limit for P is 35 gigabytes. Same with the 1.25 terabytes. It's just the math of doing 10, 500 megabytes times however many users you have, and just adding those together. So it's a little bit of math, but the 10 gigabytes is, whether you're 1 or 5,000, you at least start with 10. And then there are some users, and those are the zero amount of storage. There are some users that don't contribute to the pool of storage, and those are the kiosk workers and the external sharing people. So hopefully we can do this one fun. I'm going to switch over. Do we have people that have been, whether it's invested or interested in SharePoint for a long time? Anybody working on WSS 2.0 or 1? Yeah? 3.0? More hands? 2003? 2007, 2010? How about just who's on SharePoint Online? Sometimes that keeps the hands up for some good. Oh, great. Okay, so hopefully the value of the giveaway is kind of fun. If I can switch over, and you have to have internet connection to participate, phone or a laptop. But the giveaway is this bag, but it's not a very light bag because I raided the SharePoint swag closet. And I have a whole bag full of old books, hats, watches, wallets, a whole bunch of stuff that either has FAST logos, SharePoint logos. I think the oldest thing I have in here is an old SharePoint IT book. So lots of fun stuff. It does come with a little caveat. At least I hope that you don't, if you want everything in it, great, but that it's also maybe a nice way to meet new friends. So whomever gets this, there's a couple of hats in there. Maybe you can share a hat. But I'll leave that up to you if you wanted to pay it forward. So it's a whole bunch of great SharePoint swag. And the way that we're going to give it away, I'm going to cheat up here. I'm going to ask you an impossible question for you to know the answer to based on anything that I've shared. But the question is, let's see, I got to go back to Hootsuite and wake him up. So the question is, what is Mark Cashman's favorite bird? And before anybody even takes random guesses, I'm going to give you the answer by putting in a guest link and shrinking it down. And that should now be a short bit.ly link. I'm going to post it to my Twitter feed, which is if you go to twitter.com/mcashman. And I'll send that now, hopefully with the demo gods on my side. This should come through pretty quickly as a new post. And then while you're hopefully going out to the Twitter and hitting that link, which should take you to either a mobile or a full desktop view of the Word web app, just scroll down, and I'll tease you, for those of you that aren't participating, going to my SkyDrive Pro, where this is stored. And I'll give you a little peek ahead of Mark Cashman's favorite bird, but I've done it where you have to scroll down. Here we go, got it. Nicely done. So I'll repeat, I'll show you. The answer to the question is an olive-sided flycatcher. And it's just a bird that I used to hear when I went to summer camp. And I swear, every time I hear it, I hear the word Rick Springfield. Any Rick Springfield fans in the past? The sound of the bird sounds like Rick Springfield. So, but it reminds me, when I hear that bird, no matter where I'm at, I can picture myself laying under the stars. So congratulations for the win. And everybody who wants some swag, just go make friends with, what's your name? Derek. But hopefully the value of the little fun giveaway in the demo is he was able to hit my anonymous link for a document stored in SharePoint Online. And did you have to sign in? And what did you get it on, a desktop or a phone? Browser. Nice. So within, on a live Twitter feed, clicking a link, that's anonymous. That's the guest links. That's anonymous sharing. So we are at time. I am happy to take questions. I do pre-apologize that in about 5 minutes, there's the Rick Springfield. Did you hear it? Do that again. That's the call. I swear, I hear Rick Springfield. So you can do Pavlov dogs, and I'll just be like, sun, stars, I just love the sound. So thank you for coming. I can certainly take a couple questions, but what I pre-apologize is I have another session to get to that's about 10-minute walking, and I only have 15 minutes to get there. So thank you for your time. Thank you for coming to the conference, and have a great rest of the